Hello and welcome to Authors in Espresso. I'm your host, Nadia Gilks, and today we have a real treat. A fellow author and friend of mine who does a lot, and I think you are going to find this conversation thrilling. So let me properly introduce her to make sure I get everything in there. Today I am joined by Rhonda Green, whose work reads like a conversation with a trusted friend. It's honest, reflective, and grounded in real life. Her writing reminds me a lot of the Chicken Soup for the Soul books, stories that comfort, challenge, and heal. She is the author of the Sunrises and Sunsets trilogy, a collection of true life stories spanning decades, and her newest and most vulnerable work, Behind the Smile, Depression is Real, which shines a necessary light on mental health, resilience, and survival. Beyond her writing, she's an engineer, a leader with decades in aviation, a trailblazer navigating racism and gender bias in STEM fields, and a two-time Toastmasters district director who has mentored and trained leaders across districts, including myself. Today, we'll talk about storytelling, leadership, courage, mental health, and what it really means to live and write authentically. Rhonda Green, thank you so much for joining me today.
You, Nadia. It is my great pleasure to be here for this interview with you.
I'm so thrilled. I was like, yay, I get someone whose book is hot off the presses. But before we get into your new book, I do want to give some time to your trilogy because you wrote 3 books back to back: Surviving the Sunrises and Sunsets, Spectacular Sunrises and Sunsets, and Sensational Sunrises and Sunsets. And I love this collection of stories because it really is like Chicken Soup for the Soul, where you have individual chapters with a lesson after each one. And all of those stories are from your own life. Where did you get the courage to be so open and honest with your life stories?
Got my courage through Toastmasters. I've been a member for 19 years. And in that organization, we give speeches and give feedback to help us become better communicators. Well, in the organization, it doesn't matter what you're talking about, it's how you talk about it. So when I decided to write my books, I used my Toastmasters clubs so they could give me feedback to see if I needed to add anything or take anything out of the story. So I used that organization to help make my dream come true to be a published author.
And I loved every minute of it because I was able to get a behind the scenes, early access seat to your stories and give you some of the feedbacks on those stories. Now, how did you come up with the concept of having the individual chapters be a different story and a different life lesson instead of a memoir that reads all the way through?
Well, my goal in writing the books was to have that lesson learned so that when somebody else read the story, maybe they could learn something from what I learned going through it. Because in these books, I go through everything. I go through depression, workplace discrimination, dating between 50 and how old am I now? 50 and 66. Okay. And and everything, the best lessons that we learn in life is when we go through it. And when we go through it, it gives us encouragement and it helps other people see if that person can survive through all of these things, the death of my parents, losing my job, not getting unemployment, all of those things. If I could survive through all of those things, then it may trigger something in them to help them move on and continue on with their lives also.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that because and you have a great sense of humor, so I'm not being super dark, but one of the funniest stories I thought was when you were burying your mom and the funeral director fell into the gravesite, and I'm like, "Now, why didn't I think of that for my book?" But it's your real
Your
life
book?
story, and I'm like, "Oh, I never go to funerals that entertaining." I know everybody must have been
Your book,
like, "What in the
and I
world?"
and I loved your book, Wake Up Dead. I really love your book. So let me clarify something on that story. Um, the funeral director knew that both me and my sister, who's 2 years older than I am, that we were both single. He was so busy trying to flirt with the two of us that he kicked this steel bar into the grave. Well, the casket would not lower with that bar in it. So two of the guys that worked for the funeral home, after we finished the sermon and we were singing Mama's favorite song, which was in the program, This Little Light of Mine, that had always been Mama's favorite song. So they pushed the front of the casket back. And this short guy, he had to be shorter than 5 foot, jumped down into the grave, passed the bar up, no problem. Well, it had been a rainy Labor Day. And every time he grabbed a piece of dirt, it was falling in on him. And he looked like a crab trying to get out of a bucket. We laughed. One of my ex-husbands and one of my sister's ex-husbands both grabbed his hands and pulled him out. So even in the end, even in the very end, my mother taught us one last lesson, that life goes on no matter what, because in that time, when you lose your mom, your dad, you lose your foundation. I mean, it just crumbles from under you. And having that lesson learned right then, right when we were getting ready to leave the cemetery, it just made us laugh. It just brightened our hearts to say, wow, mom's not even here no more, and she's still giving us a lesson to learn. You know, it was
A
just
lesson
wonderful.
and some laughter through the pain.
That's true. Mm-hmm. That's true. Yes.
Now, as you were writing these personal stories, was there ever a time when you said, well, maybe I shouldn't put that into the book, or maybe that's too much? And if so, how did you get over that?
So this is what I have to tell you. When I first started writing the books during NaNoWriMo, National Novice Writing Month, in the month of November, what I would do is I'd go to the back of my ledger and I would write down different incidents, different things in my life. Now, I only published 62 stories. I'm 66 years old. I've got hundreds and hundreds of stories. Okay. I wrote all of the stories first with the lesson learned. Some of them I wrote it by hand, but for some reason, whenever I typed the story, I would add more details into it. Okay. And then I would go in and I'd put them in order. I said, well, I don't want all the sad stories together because I don't want to bring people down without being able to bring them back up. So I made sure that I coached the sad stories with some good stories with it and things. And I wanted it to be enjoyable, but I wanted the book to be where you could pick it up even if you were sitting in the bathroom, whatever you want to call it. You could read a story, put it down, and that one story would take you through the entire thing, not to where you had to read it chapter to chapter to chapter. And I put it together, and the original title was going to be Been There, Done That. But I talked to my friend, Nadia Gill, about it, and she said, girl, there are a lot of books out there named Been There, Done That. I said, hmm. I paint, and I love painting sunrises and sunsets. To me, they're the most beautiful things in this world that God has made. So that's how it became the sunrises and the sunsets. The sunrises represents stories with hope for the future, and the sunsets represent obstacles that have been overcome in the past.
I love that. Now, what I struggle with, and I'm sure somebody listening out there also may struggle with, is you said, oh, I'm 66 and I have hundreds of stories. And I just feel like I could never write a book like that because I don't feel like I have a ton of stories in me. What ideas or what do you advise people to do to generate the stories from their own life?
Just sit down and write down incidents in your life. Write down the day you got married, the day you had your daughter. When you were in high school and you went to prom, write down the things that happened in your life that were monumental to you, the things you enjoyed, the lessons you learned, those things in life that make you who you are. Write down the titles. Sometimes I would take my cell phone and say, I need to do a chapter on this, right? And it went into my notes, right? And I'd add it on. And I would just write. And if I was writing a sad story, I'd say, let me go find some happy things to write about. Because in our lives, we have both. We have those sad things in life and we have those happy things in life. And for someone to know us from our writing, if it's a memoir, then they need to know the good and the bad. So you make the decisions. And yes, I was nervous. I was nervous as sin. I lost my job during the pandemic, and I joined this excellent Toastmasters club, which brought people in telling us about publishing and about editing and all of these things. And I said, okay, I started in NaNoWriMo. I did not finish in NaNoWriMo, but that's when I started, right? I started. Then I moved. I moved from Oklahoma to from Tulsa, Oklahoma to St. Louis, Missouri for a new job. After 11 months, I got a job. You talking about a happy person. And then I said, okay, I got time. Let me go ahead and do this. Let me go ahead and finish this. And my sister kept saying, well, how many stories do you have? I said, 60, 70, 80 stories. She says, oh my God, don't put all those in the same book. She's 2 years older
Good
than I
idea.
am, and I thought about what she said. Old you are, you can get good feedback and good advice from other people. I said, okay, I'm gonna break it up into 3 books. But when I finished the 3 books, my sister said, you have more stories. I said, yes. She says, are you gonna do a book 4? I said, no. I said, I've advertised this as a trio. I've published a trio. I'm through. That's it. Any other stories I write are going to be separate. Now, this is a funny fact that most people don't know. In 2008 is when I started writing my first book. That book is still not published.
My goodness.
It's a big girl's book. It was a big girl. I'm a big girl. It was a big girl's erotica book. Okay. And the
Mm.
storyline had this young lady, a big young lady, and she met this man and she knew who he was, but he didn't remember her from high school. He was one of those jocks and football players that used to tease her and make her life in high school miserable. So, I've built up the story, and yes, there are some intimate scenes within the book because this was an adult erotica book, right? Well, I got to the point to where they both went to the high school reunion. Oh my God, it's the same school. And they have pictures on the wall of when he was tormenting her. And I haven't decided whether she's going to forgive him and love him or whether she's going to kick him to the curb. Okay. That is the only reason why I haven't finished that book. I've got to make that decision. We love those stories with
Or
happily
maybe
ever
you
after.
don't.
Or maybe I'll do 2 versions.
You
Version
could
A
do
and
2
version
versions with the
B.
2 endings.
I could do one book with ending A and then do ending B. And when they read it, they could choose which. Thank you. I hadn't thought about doing that. I'm
You're
going to have to write,
welcome.
when we get off of here, I'm going to have to write that down because I do need to finish writing that book. I need to finish writing that book. Okay. But I've always wanted to write. I used to compete in poetry contests in high school and things like that, and I would win. Yeah, I would win because I have a vivid, vivid imagination. So writing about something that's from imagination is one thing. The problem with writing about your true life and true life stories is you have to be vulnerable because you don't know who's going to read that story. You don't know. And different people have different values than you. They view things than you do. And yes, I do talk about adult intimacy in the books, but that's all it's called, intimacy. I don't get into the nitty-gritty details because it ain't that type of book. Okay? That's not the point of it. Right? And so actually I published the 3 books because what I wanted to tell people about were the times when I was deeply depressed to the point to where I wanted to take my life. But I didn't just want to get on the stage and tell people that. So I told the stories and I stuck them in the books. So it was a soft release to the public about those private things in my life. Okay. And so having them out there and having my Toastmasters hear the stories gave me a little bit more confidence to get out there and talk to people about depression and how it only takes one person to care to save a life. So now that's my mission, to get
That's so
out and
sweet.
talk to people about that. Mhm.
Yes, and that is a great segue into your new book, which has been out for a week now, a little over a week.
A week on the
Behind the
nose.
Smile, Depression. Week on the nose. Behind the smile, depression is real. And as you say, you do get very open and very intimate about those stories. And this entire book is dedicated to that time frame in your life. So, what gave you the courage to pivot and really put all of that in one story?
I've been wanting to write Behind the Smile, Depression is Real for a long time because of my experiences with depression. I know for a fact in my first episode, January the 19th, 1999. That's why I published January the 19th, 2026,
Mm.
27 years. But when I finally crawled out of my bed, I went to see my doctor. My doctor cared more about me than I cared for myself. He sent me to see the psychologist and therapist. He had the nurse drive me to the appointment and had her bring me back. And he wanted to talk to me. He said, "Did you feel comfortable? If not, I can find somebody else." And he said, "If you ever need somebody to talk to, you don't need an appointment. You just come on in here." You see, they were working hard for me. They cared more about me in those moments, telling you the truth, than I cared about myself. Okay? See, it only takes one person to really care. And years ago, I called one of my girlfriends and I said, "How you doing?" She says, "Oh, I'm tired." Instinctively, I said, "All right, sweetie, well, let me get off the phone so you could get some rest." Okay? 3 days, she was gone. I didn't take it that next step to, what are you tired of? What can I do for you? Can I help you? This is that and the other. If I had thought about tired meaning more than just tired from work and physically tired, it could be mentally tired. So as I have been thinking about these, I have started working with I have a mentor. Her name is Lisa Nichols. And she's working with me to do better at telling my story and getting my story out there so we can help save lives. That's just what I want to do. Okay.
I love that. And as you were going through your 2 episodes, when did you know for yourself that this is more than just a sad moment or a downtime and that you really needed to go outside and get some help?
Well, I started speaking out at the community centers and things like that about depression. And I would tell a little bit of my story. And after it was over, this 27-year-old young man came to me and he said, "Miss Rhonda," very respectful. He said, "You're telling my story." I said, "No, that's my story." He said, "No, it's my story because this is where I am right now." And I said, "Baby, it's okay." I said, "Maybe I'm here today to tell this story to show you that if I can survive it and I can move on, you can too." So I knew knowing about the story and talking to people about the story would help save lives. But when that young man spoke to me, I was going like, I need to talk more. I need to tell more about this. I need to put it out there. So originally, Behind the Smile, Depression is Real was going to be 15 people's different stories. But I was going like, no, I need to tell my full story. What led up to the story and the recovery. I need to tell the whole thing, both of the stories, and then provide information on depression, the symptoms, the treatments, and most importantly, how to help yourself or how to help your friends, your families, your coworkers. When I was going through abuse, my coworkers would say, "Rhonda, are you okay? Are you all right?" This, that, and the other. And I would very quietly say nothing. And since I would not respond to them, it wasn't they were not trying, but since I was not responding to them, they finally gave up. And in the book, I put, I bet you wonder, how is it that all of this was going on in my life and my family didn't know about it? When you don't live in the same state as your parents, when it comes times for family reunions, you say, "I'm sorry, I got to work. I can't take off and go." I became I became one of the best people about not knowing how to get in front of people when things were going on because I smile all the time, but when things are really bad, I crawl up in my bed and cover my head just like everybody else. Okay? Family reunion every Thanksgiving. Oh, I would take my daughter over to my mom so she could take her granddaughter with us. And I'd say, "Well, I can't go because I have to work Friday." Okay. I I got really good at giving excuses because I was embarrassed. I did not want people to know that I was going through an abusive situation. There is no economic, no racial demographic that says that a person can be abused or not abused. It happens at all ranges, all ranges.
Mhm.
And I was embarrassed to find myself being a person who was abused. I really did. But anyhow, so oh,
Now, I was talking about this upcoming interview to a few people who have also walked this path and are waiting for this interview. So I do have some questions from the listening audience who hasn't quite heard it yet, but knew this was coming. So you did talk about your doctor took very good care of you, him and his nurse, and how you're good at hiding and just being in the bed and to yourself. But how did you know when it was time to see a doctor or when it was time to get help other than just talking to your family or your friends trying to reach out to you?
so that's going to require me to tell you a little bit of the story. Okay.
Okay. If you want to, or if you just want us to read it, we can.
I'll just tell a little bit about the story. Oh, I was going to shoot myself. And I had my gun in my hand, in my mouth, and my dogs barked. Because of where we lived, if I took my life, my dogs would starve to death. Now, I'm responsible for my life, but I was responsible for them too. I let them in, and my fur babies cuddled up with me for 3 days. It took me 3 days to leave that house. Okay. I called my doctor's office, and my subconscious was saying, Rhonda, 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 get help, get help. It was just telling me, get help. And so I called. They said, come right in. We'll see you as soon as you get here. My doctor's nurse looked at my face and she said, I'm taking you right in right now. I said, okay. And he knew the participants in my drama. And I said, I didn't come to talk about them. I got problems. When he heard my problems, he immediately got me an appointment to see a psychologist and a therapist. I said, gave me the address. I said, okay. But when I walked out into the hall, the nurse came up and says, Dr. K told me to drive you over there. And when your appointment is over, to bring you back because he wants to talk to you again. You see, he wanted to know what the treatments were. He wanted to know that I got along with the psychologists and therapists, that they were the right people to help me. But he cared. In that moment, he cared more about me than I cared for myself. Okay? And sometimes all it takes is one person to really care. Just one. But I didn't know that. I did not know that there was a national number, 988. If you have any mental, want to just talk to somebody, I didn't know that. I know it now. I teach it now. Didn't know it then. Okay. I felt that I was responsible for everything. It was all my fault. My daughter was going to be okay. I was unloved, unwanted, unneeded. Could not figure out in that moment a good reason for me to stay alive. Okay. When I tell you I had spiraled down to the darkest place in my life, I mean, one thing I tell people when I speak, and I do keynote speeches about it, I said, majority of the time when somebody is depressed to the point they're ready to take their life, don't tell them to pray on it because they've already prayed on it and decided that praying wasn't going to matter. And don't try to act like an amateur psychologist. Help them get some help with a professional. If they don't want to talk to you, say, call your doctor, do this, get some help. Okay? But most people don't know what depression really is all about. You see the advertisements on TV for this, that, and the other, but those advertisements on TV do not really portray what is going on in that person's mind, what has put them there, what's going on, you know? So that is why I get out now and I start talking to people about it. Okay. Yeah, I work full time and I speak part time. Okay.
You do some of everything. You do some of everything. So my other question, from the listener, I'm so excited to have listener comments. And you touched on it a little bit. So there's the overall stigma of mental health in the United States, but then you have that subset stigma in the Black community where you often do hear, "Pray on it," or "Your faith is not deep enough," or, "You just need to go to church more," or you have Black parents in the home that don't understand and they just say, "You don't have anything to be depressed about." My mom used to say this all the time, "You don't pay bills, what do you have to be depressed about?" And I'm like, "It's a lot more out there, mom." So, did you have to overcome any of that conditioning to be okay with getting help?
Yes, but the conditioning was not from what other people said. Conditioning was about what I believed. I've heard Black people don't go to therapy. Okay?
Mhm.
At that time, it didn't matter what I'd heard before. What mattered was my subconscious kept trying to say, get help, get help, get help. I went to my doctor first. I did not know to call and make an appointment to a therapist or a counselor. I didn't even know there was a 988 number I could call. My doctor was the first person that came to my mind. Let me get in to see him. Okay. Let me get in to see somebody who is a professional that can tell me, because my family did not know about the depressions I suffered because I didn't publish a single book until after both of my parents were gone. Didn't want them to know about it. Okay. People have a habit of taking their values, what they believe, and try to tell other people that that's what you should believe also. And it doesn't work that way. Okay. Mental health is an issue. Okay. And stress. If you get too stressed, you need to see a health professional. Okay. And there's one thing about it, when you go and talk to a professional, everybody in the world is not going to know your business. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Right?
Yeah.
And until you step out from that, there are times that we do not want to talk to our families and our friends and tell them our business. When you tell one person your business, you ain't got no more private business.
Everybody knows.
But when you
Right.
go to a medical professional, they are licensed. They sign an agreement that they're not going to tell your business. You even have to sign off if you would like to allow them to use your case with a case study. They can't give people your information. That's a one-on-one conversation. And the only person who can release that conversation is you. And those of us with a permanent suntan need to get over Black people don't do this and Black people don't do that. Because ain't none of it true. Black people do everything just like everybody else. Okay? And let me tell you, everybody's life matters. Everybody's life matters. It don't matter what color your skin is. Your life matters. And if you get to the point to where you want to take your own life, then you also need to get to the point to where you need some help. Okay? My doctor did not have a permanent suntan, but that did not stop him from caring about me. The color of my skin did not make a difference to him. The fact that I was in a mental place to where I didn't want to live anymore, that was more important to him than the color of my skin. Okay? Help comes to you. It don't matter what color that help is. Okay? I've had both male therapists and female therapists. Okay? And they were both pretty good. Sometimes you want somebody to listen to you that you can tell the real truth that's not going to tell your business to everybody in the world. That's just a relationship between you and that counselor or you and that therapist so you can get it out and the therapist can ask those questions to help you really get down to the nitty gritty. So you can go all the way down to the bone and then you can start rebuilding yourself. My therapist told me one thing. He said, you do know that just because your marriage failed does not make you a failure.
Mm.
That was my second marriage I had failed. I was looking at it being my fault. I caused it. And he said, no, he was a narcissist. And when he told me my ex-husband was a narcissist, I was like, you know what narcissist meant. He had to explain it to me. He said he
You
wanted
had
his
lived the
cake.
experience, you just didn't know the title of it.
He, yeah, I'm an engineer. We don't talk mental health. I was, he wanted his cake, his pie, and his ice cream too. And you allowed him to have them. I was like, that's true. That's true. I allowed him to have that. I allowed him to believe that what he did was correct and it was not. But somebody who knew it, a professional who knew how the mind thinks, how the mind works, was able to help me get my mind back online and get on the right track. Mhm.
I
Got more
love that.
questions? I love questions.
Oh, for sure. So you mentioned a little bit about it when you said that your coworkers were checking in, then after a while they got tired of getting shut down. But what little signs or symptoms can family and friends look for to know that they need to be checking in on someone?
If you know a person that's got a vivacious personality that's always going out with the group, always doing things, and they stop, all of a sudden they don't want to attend events, they don't want to talk to you on the phone, they could be having a problem. Then you've got the reverse. That person who usually stays to themselves, and then all of a sudden they are way out there, way out there. They've changed their personality. And a friend of mine that I worked with, his fraternity brother had a big celebration in August for all of their frat brothers to get together, stuff like that. He was having a ball. He was gone in 2 weeks. He was having one blowout before he go. He was planning on leaving. Okay. And my friend said, well, why did he do that? I said, nobody would ever know. Nobody knows what's going on in your mind but you. Okay. So when you have a person who's always willing to do things and then all of a sudden they don't want to hang out, they don't want to do anything, they go home, they stay home, they don't want to talk to nobody. Okay. If you invite them out to dinner and they don't go, go to Boston Food Market or someplace, buy the dinner and bring them, say, hey, I brought dinner, let's eat. They're less likely to not let you in the door. Okay. People that are depressed, they stop caring about their bills, their home. You'll go into their house. Sometimes their trash is full. This is that, and the other. Things that are not normal for them because you've known them for years. When their behavior switches so quickly, that's a sign that something is going wrong. Unless there is something that has made them happy, that has made them want to change their lives. Okay? It's hard to know. It's just like in my keynote, I said, have you ever asked somebody's how they're doing? And I said, what did they say? And people would yell out to me what they say. And I say, have you ever asked someone how they're doing? And they said they were tired. I regret to this day that I did not ask my girlfriend, what are you tired of? One little sentence. What are you tired of? Now, she may have answered me and told me, or may not. But since I didn't ask the question, she didn't tell me. Okay? You see somebody coming to work with a black eye, bruises on their cheek. You reach over to touch their arm and they, you know somebody has hit them. You know something is going on. All you can say is, can I help you? Is there anything I can do for you? This is okay. This is not your fault. Even in the book, I got different sentences that you could I got to put on the things that you could say to people who are going through depression. I thought I better put that in there because we don't know what to say. We don't know how to
Yeah, we
approach
need the
them.
resources. Yeah, that's so critical.
And don't ask them to explain the depression because the majority of us are depressed don't understand why we are depressed. We're just feeling that way. You know, it takes professionals to bring it out in us, to bring it to our mind why we are where we are at in those moments. Okay.
I love that. So, thank you for all of the resources. Thank you for allowing me to be a beta reader for the new book. I appreciate that, and people will get a lot from it. And like you mentioned too, you also do keynote speeches on this so people can hire you. So, at the end, we'll definitely get your contact information so that people know where to find you. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about your leadership because, of course, as I mentioned, you have been in STEM. Um, for what,
45
30
years.
plus years now?
Yes, 45.
45 years.
Yes.
And Black women in science and technology and mathematics and engineering, it's still very difficult to this day. You don't have a lot of Black women, especially in the field, and don't always have the support. So 45 years ago, who were you looking to as a mentor and how did you get through being the top of your class, going for it, having this amazing career and not really having a lot of people around you who look like you?
My father. Father, my father was a supervisor for federal affirmative action. Okay. And when I would come home or had difficulty at work, he'd say, yeah. And at one time I seriously had a case, and he'd say, well, you need to think about it. I was in Fort Worth. He worked over in Dallas. He said, here's the number to the EEO office in Fort Worth. He said, but you need to think about it before you call. Number one, do you have other people who will corroborate what happened to you? I said, yeah, no problem. He says, now, if you go the whole limit to get that other person fired, what's going to happen to you in your career? You need to think what's going to be the best thing for you in your career. So, yeah, I put up with some BS, and that's as clean as it gets. I put up with that BS because if I didn't, and they said, oh, she got this person fired or this, that, and other, it wasn't going to be that that person did something they shouldn't do. It was going to be she got that person fired. So then it was going to be difficult for me to work with the guys I had to work with. So I had to make those decisions. Okay. I have a story in my book about that, in the Sunrises and Sunsets about that. And when I was writing the book, I was on a cruise ship, and I stopped these two ladies. It was a grandmother and her granddaughter. And I says, I'm an author and I'm writing a book. Can I read this to you and get your opinion? So when I told them about what happened, the granddaughter in her 20s, 28, she says, I would have got that MF fired. And they were Caucasian. And they had stopped a friend of theirs that they had met on the bus coming to the cruise ship. And she sat down and she said, I'm right there with you. She was an engineer in the geographical field, and I didn't know it. You can't tell who's an engineer and who's not anyway by looking at them. And she says, and I understand that. And that made me add to the story why I did not have that person fired. Number one, everybody in life has a bad day. Okay. This person went off on me, called me the N word and so many things that I had never been addressed like that I was only 20 years old when I got out of college, and I'd never had anything like that happen. I didn't even have to put a statement. We had 169 fellow engineers that went and put in statements. The problem was is
Wow.
back in 1980, I had to make the decision whether this person was going to be fired. That should not have been an employee decision. It should have been a personnel decision because the personnel did not treat anybody with respect. Right now, that person would have been fired on the spot, but back then things were different. And I had to think about it. I said, well, if I go and take this to the max and that man loses his job, I said, these people are not going to work with me. And that is going to follow me my entire career. I had a 3-year-old daughter that depended on me to keep a roof over her head. And just like most women, when we got something going on in our job, but we got a family that we're responsible for, I didn't have no husband that was helping me at that time. Okay. So I had to snuff it up and take my butt to work. Okay. Because sometimes you got to do what you got to do to take care of your family. Men. And I said, wow. I said, because if I leave here because of that, and they call somebody else who works here, they're going to say, you don't want to work with her because she's always trying to pull the black card. Right. I said, I can't have that with my career because I won't have a career. Those 4 years that I spent in college will go down the drain. So sometimes you gotta suck it up and move on till another door opens for you. You know, you. It's just like
And now
pledging a for fraternity or sorority. You got to put up with the BS to get in. Okay. Sometimes to make your name known and let them see something other than the color of your skin. Let them learn from your competency, what you do for the company. They're not gonna give you respect. Okay, we're on something totally different now. They're not gonna give you respect just because they gave you the job. Okay, you got to earn it.
that's true.
You got to earn it. Then once you earn it, that's something totally different. Okay. You got to earn their respect. They've got to respect you. So when you have to make those hard decisions, they say, well, I've worked with that person for a while and they've never done this. But what happened? Oh my God, I understand. It's a total different mindset. Okay. When we take action, we got to see how it's going to affect the rest of the family. And for me, it was me and my 3-year-old little girl. I had to go to work every day. I needed that check. I had to keep a roof over my head is no big deal. I could move back in with mom and daddy, but I was grown. Once you have a kid, you grown. You got to be responsible for them, right? So sometimes there's a lot of things that happen on jobs. Now, when I get upset at job, I look at my manager or whoever just pissed me off. I go, uh-huh, mm-hmm. I said, okay, well, I'll catch it with you in a minute. I go sit in my car, take a good 45-minute break. I don't smoke, so I take all my smoke breaks all at the same time. And I think on it. I pray on it. And I say, okay, remember, this is your request for a paycheck. You need to be here because you need that paycheck.
Well, I was gonna ask too, how did you decide to, make the turn and go into aviation?
Okay. Um, when I graduated high school, what I wanted to do was teach mathematics. But I graduated a year early. And my aunt taught at Prairie View A&M University. They had this summer program for newly graduated high school seniors to get them interested in engineering. Well, I went. After 2 weeks, they gave me a 4-year scholarship. I took that scholarship because it took the financial burden off my parents. They were paying for my oldest sister's tuition full time and my middle sister's tuition full. Back in them days, that was a lot of money, right? And so that's how I ended up becoming an engineer. Not what I wanted. I wanted to teach. Okay. So I teach people communication skills. Now I share everything I learned. I share knowledge with other people. That is where I get my desire, my passion for teaching. That's my passion for speaking because I want to tell people and share the knowledge about this. But the engineering, I got the degree. At that time, they were looking for people of color in engineering. The big companies came to my university to interview us on campus because they needed Black degree professionals. That got you the job, but then you had to do the job. And I love what I do. I love what I do. I enjoy it tremendously. Okay. I just have a little niche spot on my job that nobody else does. So they let me get away with everything. But I have 45 years of experience when the majority of them are 10 to 15. And I've worked
Oh,
aircraft and new aircraft and aircraft in the field at the repair organization. So I have multiple views looking at the same thing. So that 45 years of knowledge, majority of the people with my type of knowledge right now, 40 and up, are starting to retire. And so they have nobody there to train the new people coming in. So my job is to help train the new people coming in. So when I get ready to leave that mofo, in 4 or 5 years from now, I may retire, I may not. I enjoy it. I have enough vacation time now that I can travel and go speak different cities, different states. I can speak on Zoom. I can speak on Zoom any day of the week, right? Okay, I'm at work right now. It's called work from home. Okay. My manager knows it. He knows that I speak and this, that, and the other. But as long as I give him his 8 hours, he doesn't care when I give it to him, as long as I give it to him and do my job. You see, every company and everybody you work for is not going to allow you to do that. Okay.
no, not at all.
But
That is a dream.
yeah,
Well, that is my dream, working from home and just let me get my job done and leave me alone. That's the dream.
working
So
from
it's
home.
kind of funny because
I
Hmm?
hate working from home.
Oh my god, I love it.
But you know what?
I'm one of those people that if I didn't have to leave the home, I would be home all the time. I love home.
Yeah, but when I'm at work, I have 3 monitors. I have my 3D drafting on this monitor. I have my network on this one, and I'm working on typing on Word and this, that, and the other on this monitor. At home, I got one little bitty monitor with all them little screens on it, and it's a pain in the hiney. Okay. And if they ever put it to where they want me to work remote full time, then those 2 other monitors will be coming home with me too. Okay. But the only
That
reason why
works.
I'm at home today is because of all the snow that's on the ground in St. Louis.
That's right.
And it,
That's right. You Winter Storm Fern has made its way all over America and everybody's suffering.
yes, I told them, I said, if there's less than 10 degrees on Monday, I will be working from home. I got up early and I sent them a message working from home. And I might be working home tomorrow also. We'll see.
You should just probably plan for that because I don't think it's slacking up that much just yet. So you talked about loving to train, loving to teach. So we should dive into Toastmasters just a little bit because on top of everything else that we've heard you do, you've been district director twice
Hmm.
in two different districts,
Hmm.
which is almost unheard of. So tell us what drew you to the leadership side of Toastmasters.
That is a hard one. Um, I'll tell you exactly. I wanted to become a distinguished Toastmaster. And in order to be a distinguished Toastmaster in the organization, you have to serve as a district leader, whether it's an area director, division director, district director, on up. Well, once I found out about all the requirements, I said I might as well go all the way to the top. You get different experience at each level. As area director, you work with 3 or 4 clubs. Division director, you work with 12 or so clubs. And how further you go up, the more you learn. But when I was club road director and I had to do marketing for Toastmasters to build new clubs, the same marketing that I did with them, I can do to market my own books, market my own skills. I looked at everything that I was learning in Toastmasters to help me finally in my retirement career. Okay. And I had so many opportunities to speak. There is nothing better than speaking in front of a group of people who don't know you that well, speaking you, and they offer you feedback of what they're doing. But the leadership thing is because I needed to be a district leader in order to get my DTM. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I am an overachiever. I have 9 DTM awards. Okay. It was not
My
my
gosh.
when I moved to St. Louis, it was not my intent at all to be district director again. But the immediate past district director, the district leadership chair called me and he said, Rhonda, we don't have anybody that's willing to run for program quality director. He said, would you run? I said, sure. That's setting up conferences, events, and working with the education department. An opportunity for me to train people, right? So it just so happens I was from out of town. Nobody knew me. And right before the nomination closed, a young lady who had served ran. I wasn't supposed to win that race, and I didn't. But then one of the division directors stepped out before August, and the district director called me and asked me would I step in and fill that position, division director. I said, sure. And I did. I got division director of the year. Woo! I worked my honey off. Okay. I was just trying to help people. That's just what I do. And then the next year, the person who had won PQD, #2 position in Toastmasters in a district, was running for district director. I said, okay, I'm not going to run. Okay. The district leadership chair called me on the phone. The current district director called me on the phone and said, will you run? Because you have some skills. You came from a district that was a little bit more regimented, was making sure that it was following the rules and things like that. And we need that structure. Okay. I ran. I wasn't supposed to win, but I did. So therefore, once I did, that I did my best to help that district move forward. Would I do it again?
And you did a fantastic job. Yes, are you going for a third?
No. No, I'm working on like
Well, you never really know what life is gonna bring you.
yeah, I'm working on this book. I mean, I got the book. So now I'm planning the launch for that. I've got a brand new website. It's not fully open yet. It's rhondagreenspeaks.com. I've got to get it up. I had an interview with motivational speaker Lisa Nichols. I just found out today that it's going to show
Wonderful.
on ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox on February the 20th and 21st. So I've got to have that website up and
Okay.
going. Yes, but I love Toastmasters. I help my Toastmasters. For years, I've been teaching people how to write and edit books for low cost without having AI write it for you. Okay. I'm just not
Mhm.
into that. And so I do that also. I do that part time also. And I'm setting it up to where I'll be giving away the teaching the how to start writing and how to edit, self-edited. I'll be teaching that free. And there will be a cost for how the part of the on how to publish your books because If you pay someone else to publish your books, you're going to spend a minimum of $800 to $2,800, if not more. And you won't sell a single more book after spending that money as you would have if you didn't. I'm scheduling my book launch. I have to wait until I get the author copies. I've ordered 50 author copies, 50, 80. I ordered 10 of these books because I was down to only 5 each of these. So I put in a big order for books last week. They'll all be here on February the 3rd. And I'm going to set that up because we're going to take Behind the Smiles, Depression is Real to #1 Amazon bestseller. We're gonna take it up there. We're gonna
I
put it out
love
there.
that.
I have 3 people doing different launch campaigns all on the same day. We're gonna do this. We're gonna have fun. Remember I told you before that we started recording that if you show up, you can be in a drawing to get one of those cute little clip lights that you could put over your cell phone for when you're doing your selfie and this, that, and the other. Girl, my sister and I have been talking about this for ages. We're gonna put it together and just have a ball, have a good time. It's gonna be fun. Okay, it is going
I
to be
can't
fun.
wait. I love a book launch.
It's going to be
Now, is there
virtual.
anything
It's going to be
Oh,
virtual.
okay. Well, even better. I know it's kind of weird because I feel like there's a little bit of a delay between the both of us. So I've been trying to like work through that, but I think we captured everything pretty well. Is there anything that I have missed or any message that you wanted to put out for your reader? Anything that you want to say right now that I might not have covered?
Okay, all of my books are on Amazon. They're on Amazon. The ebooks are on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Apple Books, Bookoo, a lot of them. But most people go straight to Amazon. Okay, you could just go
Mhm.
Surviving the Sunrises and Sunset series. It's going to come up, looks just like that, and it's going to say by Rhonda Green. Or the new
Uh-huh.
book is already being sold on Amazon. Behind the Smile, Depression is Real. It's on there in ebook and paperback. They're ready. Okay. But to contact me personally, you can contact me at rhondagreenspeaks@gmail.com. I'm not giving you the website because rhondagreenspeaks.com won't be ready for 2 more weeks. Okay. But in 2 weeks, my regular website will be up too. I'll be up and running. And I've already started doing keynote speeches. And I spoke on January the 8th with a group called Women of Visionary Influence out of Dallas, Texas. Oh my God, we had a ball. It was, I got to send them. They want the,
Nice.
I forgot. I'm thankful for bringing that up because I need to send them a link to the book because they want to know about it. But it was fun. I enjoy getting out and speaking to people. And it's my thing. I speak to profits, nonprofits. It all depends. Okay. I can speak to anybody virtually in any country. And currently I can speak in Missouri, Oklahoma, Kansas, the states around Missouri that I can get to because I still work full time. I'm not ready to go full time on speaking yet. We're going to build that up to where when I get ready to retire, I can do that and I can just travel all over the world and speak. Okay. But I do speak virtually and I
I
have
love it.
I have just as much fun speaking virtually as I have had today interviewing with you.
Thank you. Thank you. And is there any social media that you want to put out for us to follow?
No, not yet. Anybody that wants to contact me, wants to get information, right now, they can see me an email at rhondagreenspeaks@gmail.com. I'm just looking forward to it, scheduling this book launch, get out there and do this thing. Okay. And let me tell all of your readers this one thing. If I can write a book and I can publish it, so can. But for those that want to write your memoirs, those that want to write down all of those recipes before they're gone. Those that want their family to know about them. Those that have a vivid imagination and just wants to tell a fantasy story. Start writing. Start writing. And let me tell you, all of us have what I call player haters in our life. Just because they think you can't do it, the only person that can stop you is you. If you want to be an author, you can be an author. Okay? And get with me and I'll show you how to market your book so you can make some money off of those books. Yeah.
Yes, you are genius at marketing. I love the story about you grabbing people on your cruise ship and just started reading chapters to them and getting feedback. So many creative ideas. Well, I just want to thank you for stopping by today. It's been a pleasure interviewing you as I knew it would. I can't wait for other people to listen to this interview and really take away some nuggets of wisdom. And did you want to hold up your first book one more time?
Yes, all I wanted to say is this. I was on the plane flying and I was doing editing on the second book, and the lady sitting next to me says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm writing on a book." And so I handed her my book card. It had this one on it and it had the QR code and the website. She sat there and bought it, sitting next to me. She laughed and giggled so much in that book that when the plane stopped, people said, "Could I have one of your cards? Could I have your?" It is so wonderful when people are asking you for your card. When I would go to the post office to mail off the autograph copies, my postmistress says, "What is it that you keep coming over here and mailing?" I said, "My book." She said, "What is it about?" She said, "Could I buy a set?" I said, "Yes, you can buy a set. I'll bring it to you tomorrow." You've got to talk about it. You've got to talk about it. You've got
Yeah.
to put an advertisement in the conference program, no matter what organization you're in. You've got to pay $50 for a vendor table at that conference. Get out there and sell your books. Pop up shops. I love going to pop shops. Now, know this, you cannot just sit behind the table and go. You got to catch them, say, "Hey, come over here and let me talk to you for a minute," and tell them something funny about your book. Tell them something you think that would interest them so they will buy it. Okay? You have to market your book. Okay? You got to do it or it's not going to sell. All right?
Yeah.
Everybody has a story. Everybody has a book in there.
Yes.
And if you want to be an author, start writing the book. Writing it is the hardest part. Write it. Don't write and edit. Just write, 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 write. And when you finally figure that you've written everything, set it aside for 3 weeks, then start editing. Okay? But write it. Write it. Nobody can write your story for you. Or do like I do and turn on the recorder on my cell phone and let it record the whole story into a note. Then I email it to myself. Oh, it's already typed. Hello. Okay. Thank you,
Yeah.
Nelsa. I have had a ball, and this has been a great pleasure to talk with you.
Thank
And
you.
guys, if you want to contact me, rhondagreenspeaks@gmail.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much and have an awesome day.